Are you surprised to hear from me? Yeah, I had a feeling you would be, so tell me what's going on out there. Did you really believe these walls would stop me from reaching you? From the inside, come on, you know me better than that. You know how I move. We probably shouldn't even be having this conversation right now, but rules have always been suggestions when the stakes are high enough. And besides, let's not pretend this is unfamiliar territory. Diddy is just another working-class stiff while he's at Fort Dix clocking in, reporting for duty, blending into routine. And in prison, when someone leans across a table and asks, "You read any good books lately?" Diddy is the answer. He's the one they point to, the librarian, the recommendation guy, the unexpected quiet presence behind the desk. We've even got footage of him walking in, reporting for work like it's any other shift in any other building. The audio crackles before the voice fully arrives. It's grainy, compressed, obviously recorded from another device. It sounds distant and immediate at the same time, but it's clear enough to recognize the tone instantly. Clear enough for people online to pause mid-scroll, to replay it once, then twice, then a dozen times. Clear enough for the internet to freeze for half a second before exploding into speculation. With all due respect, my brother, how's your wife doing? I heard she's been spending a lot of time on the farm. She really likes talking to that pig. The line floats out casually, almost lazily, like harmless teasing, but there's something beneath it, something coiled. It lands soft but doesn't feel soft. He reminds him about that little road trip he took, the one he didn't invite him on, the one he handled alone, but he says he could always change his mind, always extend the invitation next time. It's delivered with a chuckle that doesn't quite mask the edge underneath. It sounds like a joke, but it doesn't feel like one. It feels like a reminder, a warning dressed up in velvet. The other voice tries to close the door quickly. Everything's fine, everything's under control. But they can't talk right now, not like this, not on this line, and that's when the first voice shifts. Fine, then I'll talk and you listen. You told me the storm would pass if I stayed quiet, if I laid low, if I let it blow over, but the weather isn't clearing, it's building. The clouds are stacking higher, the wind's picking up. He says he might be catching a cold, so he needs vitamin E and his special K serum. It sounds absurd on the surface, almost cartoonish, but it's layered, it's coded. It's the kind of line that makes you laugh for a split second before you realize you shouldn't. Lax, the other voice says, forcing steadiness. Something fell through, but it'll be back on track soon. Just keep calling your family. You'll be with them soon. It's meant to reassure. But the first voice isn't looking for comfort. He's thinking bigger than comfort. He's thinking optics, headlines, narrative. He mentions Thanksgiving, says he's making calls too. Make sure it goes straight to the shade room, to TMZ, make me look like a good father. He understands how this game is played. He always has. Image is currency, perception is leverage. And then he says it plainly, all I need is one juror on my side and this case is over. Confidence, maybe. Or maybe it's bravado held together with sheer will. Then he pivots to logistics like they matter just as much as freedom. Make sure the Amazon deliveries get back on schedule. Make sure everything runs smoothly. If everything moves the way it's supposed to, there won't be any reason for us to talk again. It's business layered over threat, layered over reassurance. The lines blur. Just chill, Puff, the other voice says, trying to sound firm, trying to reclaim ground. I told you I'm gonna get it done. But there's strain there now, you can hear it between the syllables. The first voice isn't finished. He drifts into talk about a movie, Eyes Wide Shut. You seen it, famous celebrity in there, right? Tom Cruise, what's your point? And then the tone tightens again. Maybe I'm mixing up actors. Got a lot of movies in my head, sometimes I confuse them. Some actors are so good, he says, they act like they don't even know they're being recorded. The words hang there, he doesn't elaborate, he doesn't have to. Then he circles back to the wife again, casual, almost bored, like it's nothing. But it's not nothing, it's a thread being pulled gently, deliberately. The kind of thread that unravels something if tugged too hard. Then comes the strange instruction, the one that sits heavy. Keep the worm food away from my house while I'm gone. It gets messy. Too many insects start digging around. He paints the image slowly, deliberately. And remember when I cleaned up the worm food around your house, I kept a sample, just in case you ever need it. There's no laughter now, no attempt at humor. The other voice snaps back sharper this time. Don't push your limits. I'm not the one to play with. You're in there and I'm out here. It's supposed to sound powerful, final, but it feels thinner than before, like distance is the only shield left, like geography is being used as armor. And that's what makes the call so magnetic. It isn't just the words, it's the imbalance. One voice behind walls, yet still sounding like it's trying to command the room. The other voice free, yet sounding cautious, measured, aware that every syllable might echo somewhere it wasn't meant to. The call wasn't meant for the public. That's what gives it weight. It feels unfiltered, unmanaged, raw, and in an era where everything is scripted, polished, rehearsed, raw audio feels like truth even when context is missing. Within minutes of the clip surfacing, timelines flood. Reaction channels dissect every inflection. Comment sections fracture into camps. Supporters hear resilience. Critics hear desperation. Some hear coded threats. Others hear calculated strategy. The voice itself sounds different from the persona people remember. Less theatrical, less amplified, still controlled, but stripped of stadium acoustics and boardroom echoes. There's no music swelling behind it, no flashing lights, just a crackling line and breathing between sentences. And that's what unsettles people most, the humanity in it, the pauses, the careful word choices, the subtle shifts in tone. Because when someone who once commanded stages and boardrooms is suddenly speaking from confinement, the contrast alone becomes spectacle. Every breath becomes evidence, every joke becomes a potential message, every pause becomes a theory waiting to be born, and maybe that's why it spreads so quickly, not because it's long, not because it's explosive, but because it's loaded with tension, with ambiguity, with the strange side of power confined yet still reaching. Behind the walls, the routine continues. The library desk, the books, the quiet work, but outside those walls, the narrative machine keeps running. The call becomes a mirror. People project onto it what they already believe. Some see a titan regrouping, others see a man scrambling, some hear control, others hear cracks forming beneath the surface. And somewhere between the crackle of that line and the silence that follows, one thing becomes undeniable. Even confined, even reduced to a monitored phone call, the voice still commands attention. Not because it's loud, but because it refuses to disappear. The first voice doesn't ease up, it leans in harder. It keeps stacking pressure the way a seasoned negotiator stacks leverage, one small remark at a time. Don't have another Kit Kat, it's bad for you. The line sounds trivial, almost absurd, but nothing in this exchange feels accidental. He complains about weight, about needing to get someone on board again, about pulling strings again. And then comes the quiet threat tucked at the end, or else. It isn't shouted, it isn't dramatic. It's delivered flat, steady, like a fact that doesn't need decoration. Then something shifts, the irritation sharpens into something closer to paranoia. The silence around him begins to feel like betrayal. He starts naming it. Why is Opera staying quiet? Why is Ellen moving to another country? Why has Leo been in Fiji for months? The questions aren't really questions. They're accusations wrapped in confusion. They're the sound of someone scanning the horizon for loyalty and finding too much distance. You already ruined my damn name, he says, and you know what that means. He doesn't finish the thought. He doesn't need to. The unfinished sentence hangs in the air, heavy and implied. The threat works precisely because it remains unspoken. It leaves the listener to imagine the rest, and imagination is always more powerful than specifics. Then the frame widens and the visuals take over. The crackling phone line fades into institutional fluorescent lighting. You see him in the library, calm, composed, making recommendations, handing out books and DVDs to other inmates like this is simply his shift for the day. He reports to work, removes his jacket, folds his scarf, settles behind a desk. It looks less like a federal facility and more like a modest public school library, shelves neatly arranged, worn tables, muted colors, because it used to be a chapel. Now it's a media library inside that former chapel, and this is where he works. He's enrolled in the Life Connections program, an 18-month initiative focused on rehabilitation, spirituality, and connecting inmates with charitable and community-based programs. Participation can mean time credits. Time credits mean earlier release. In the library, he helps distribute religious materials. He checks out movies. He pushes a television cart across the floor for group viewings. There's a quiet routine to it. When he first arrived, he was assigned to the laundry room, sorting clothes, folding uniforms, adjusting to a new hierarchy. Now he's here in a space of books and quiet conversations. On paper, it looks like progress. And that's the part that unsettles people most, the contrast. Not just the fall from stage lights to fluorescent bulbs, but the quiet normalization of it. When someone who once commanded arenas, boardrooms, and billion-dollar conversations is suddenly heard speaking from confinement, the shock isn't just about the content of his words, it's about the location. The setting rewrites the tone. The call was never meant to be public. That's what gives it force. It feels unfiltered, unmanaged, stripped of public relations polish. In a world built on curated appearances, raw audio is perceived as authenticity, even when context is missing. Within minutes of the clip surfacing, timelines flood. Reaction channels replay the same 20 seconds on loop. Comment sections fracture into opposing camps. Supporters insist the voice reflects strength, composure under pressure, strategy in motion. Critics hear cracks, denial dressed as confidence, bravado that sounds thinner behind walls. Everyone becomes an analyst. Every pause is scrutinized. Every inflection is replayed. Tone becomes testimony. The voice itself sounds different than the persona people remember. Less theatrical, less amplified. There's no stadium reverb, no audience applause, no music swelling behind it. It's still controlled, but it's smaller now, contained, stripped of the echo chambers he once dominated. And then there's that statement allegedly on record, allegedly captured knowingly, perhaps intended for one person but instantly inherited by millions. It isn't long, it doesn't need to be. A single sentence spoken from confinement carries more gravity than a dozen carefully staged interviews ever could. Coverage quickly shifts from shock to analysis. Maybe the library assignment is a promotion, maybe he leveraged connections, maybe he requested something different from the laundry room. Then the speculation widens into image, into branding, into optics. His hair, the hat, the visible signs of aging. What does he do when he gets out? Does he try to reclaim the stage? Does he pivot to executive roles? Does he write a memoir, produce a documentary about his journey? Reframe confinement as a chapter of resilience. Even the mechanics of federal sentencing become part of the conversation. Good behavior credits, work program credits, percentage reductions, time becomes math. Incarceration becomes arithmetic, optics become currency. And through it all, the narrative machine keeps running, feeding on contrast, on speculation, on the strange and magnetic image of power compressed into a monitored phone line and a quiet prison library. The broader media narrative doesn't slow down, it accelerates. Documentaries begin stacking on top of one another, each promising a deeper look, a sharper angle, a more complete picture. Retrospectives revisit the rise, the empire, the mythology. One highly anticipated series, executive produced by a longtime rival, becomes the centerpiece of the conversation. Headlines track its chart rankings. Social media posts amplify clips and quotes. The director frames the project not just as a story about one man, but as a reflection of the public itself. About celebrity worship, about power, about the cost of putting people on pedestals and pretending they're untouchable. Then the legal tension escalates. Attorneys fire off cease and desist letters. Accusations surface about unlicensed private footage. Questions multiply: who owned the material? Who had the rights? How was it obtained? A major platform insists everything was acquired legally. The subject insists it was never meant to be used this way. That gap between what was intended and what was released becomes fertile ground for speculation. And speculation thrives in uncertainty. When the public doesn't have full context, it fills in the blanks. It always does. Underneath every headline, every panel discussion, every reaction video, the same theme keeps resurfacing: control and the struggle to reclaim it. That's what makes the phone call magnetic, not just the words themselves, but the environment surrounding them. A prison phone call from a fallen titan isn't merely information, it's spectacle. It carries symbolism. Supporters interpret it as resilience, as proof the empire is merely paused, recalibrating behind closed doors. Critics hear something different: erosion, collapse, bravado straining against reality. And then there are the neutral observers, drawn in not by loyalty or condemnation, but by fascination. Because there is something inherently compelling about power colliding with limitation, about someone once synonymous with influence now speaking from confinement, still attempting to project scale beyond the walls enclosing him. Every breath becomes part of the narrative: the background hum of the phone line, the slight delay before a response, the careful pacing of urging phrases. The prison phone system itself becomes a character, monitored, recorded, timed, cut off without warning. Speech becomes strategic. Every word carries weight because every word carries risk. Analysts debate whether the tone sounds calculated or emotional. Was it a message crafted deliberately to maintain influence, or was it frustration slipping through restraint? Was it dominance reasserted or vulnerability disguised? Either way, it shapes perception, and perception shapes opportunity. Opportunity shapes legacy. That's the quiet chain reaction happening beneath the noise. Right now, the legacy hangs suspended, vibrating between defiance and desperation, between curated image and unfiltered reality. It's neither fully intact nor fully dismantled, it's in tension. Because in the digital era, privacy is almost a myth for public figures in crisis. Especially when recordings are involved, especially when the tone is bold. A moment intended for one person lands in the ears of millions. It's dissected, clipped, memed, debated. Whether the promised revelations ever materialize almost becomes secondary. The anticipation itself is enough to keep the cycle alive. The doors may be locked, the environment restricted, the routine reduced to fluorescent lights and library shifts, but the narrative never stops moving. That single crackling recording ensures that even in confinement, the Titan remains at the center of the conversation. Not under stage lights, not behind a conference table, but through a monitored line that turned into a viral tremor. And until something louder replaces it, that echo will keep replaying, reshared, reinterpreted, reframed, long after the call itself has gone silent.